Winds come from the empty desert, the place that has been ignored and forgotten, the place that the gods reside. It sweeps through the cities, eats up the storehouses, plunders coffers. When it's done, it keeps moving. On and away it goes. Nothing could have been done to prepare for it, nor anything to have prevented it. Such is the way of nature. We build up islands in the wildernesses of the world, up high enough that we forget we are still part of the food chain, that the weather cannot be ignored with a coat and a fireplace, that floods cannot be outrun by a boat, that forests will swallow us if we stray too far, and that no wisdom can counteract any of this. Such is the robber. Whether a force of nature or an unforeseen invading army, the point stands nonetheless. The gameplay reinforces a sense of security from the beginning. Players cannot raise armies on one another. They cannot capitalize on each other's roads or settlements. Beyond verbal communication, trading is the only way to interact with those who must be outperformed. It is all friendly competition, a bleached way of approaching imperialism. But a wind rushes through. Upon the first roll of a 7, a player moves the robber out from the desert and onto a territory, nullifying its resource production until moved again, and giving that player the ability, for the only time in the game, to steal from an opponent. And any player, even he who moves the robber, who is unfortunate enough to have been saving cards for a great expansion, must forfeit half of their deck back into the resource bank. It's that last detail that sparked my interpretation of the mechanic. If it were only for the nullifying of production and stealing of a card, the robber could really be only seen as that, a robber, some kind of hired merchant that could be called upon with a specific role. But he steals from the one who hired him as well, even when summoned by a card rather than a role. That can't be right. Unlike in a video game or a movie or a book, in a board game, every action must be performed by the players. So if there is a force that acts upon the players outside of their scope of play, one player must act as the ambassador for the said mechanic. Think the bank in Monopoly. One player is at once subject to and responsible for the money coffers. In a digital rendition of the game, no player plays the bank because the force is returned to its proper distance. So although the players are responsible for moving the robber, they have no say in his actions. They can only reap minimal, random rewards, while also potentially suffering catastrophic losses. The Wanderer is a trope of folklore and of literature. Is he Odin in disguise, or a wizard coming to offer you a quest? Is he friendly, or is he hostile? Whatever characteristics the Wanderer takes on, he represents the force outside of man's zone of control that tests him as per the goal sought after. Bilbo is quite comfortable in his hobbit hole, reading and writing about faraway places. And then Gandalf appears and holds him to it, calling him to make true the things that until then he had only dreamt about. But the Wanderer can be hostile too, if that goal is power or wealth or conquest. And so the robber enters the zone of the territory, the border thought uncrossable unless permission granted, and he puts the player to the test. He's not interested in their wealth or their empire, however, just as tsunamis and earthquakes do not attack for personal gain. For those who have saved too much, he takes, but only to be returned to the same deck to be later drawn from. And for the duration of his stay, he sterilizes the land, not to bear any fruit until he departs. The robber is the wind of divine misfortune, the breath that toppled Babel, that rose the waters to annihilate mankind, that blew snow through the ranks of invaders, that stalled armies on their way to conquest. Man has been given enough intelligence to expand and prosper, but not enough wisdom to know that he is not the source or continuation of it. He grows food in the summer to store for the winter, praying that an unexpected freeze doesn't come through and annihilate it all by chance. And that chance, the roll of a 7, the number of the divine, is the most common roll of 2 die, so as misfortune strikes often and without warning.